There it is. Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. I'm here with Tyler Jones and Glen Willis. We're recording on a Tuesday night before they play the Knicks and after they got a win over the Pelicans and lost to the Boston Celtics. Uh, what'd you think of that loss to the Celtics, Glen?
I mean, 3-point shooting is like Hawks fans just prepare themselves now to watch the other team make 23-point shots, right? So, I mean, so I had a few questions on Twitter during the game, like, hey, why can't the Hawks continuity really matters in the NBA, and the Celtics built up this for years, right? Credit to them also for getting final pieces like Derek White and Drew Holiday that kind of keep that fit into what they're doing. But this is what makes me laugh too when I see people on Twitter say, why haven't they fired Quinn Snyder yet? You have to build up something like this, and it takes years to get there, right? And that's the reality, And I know Jaylen Brown didn't play, and Kristaps, Porzingis isn't going to be playing until sometime in December. But everybody who's on that team knows exactly what to do when they're on the floor. They know exactly what to do when they're on the floor, and that doesn't happen overnight. So the Hawks are running a new offense this year. They're still trying to iterate the roster, I think, when opportunities arise, and but you can't force that, unless you just want to, make losing trades when maybe that's not the right thing for yourself. So I think I understand sports fans, Hawks fans wanting better results sooner. I think that's a normal thing for fans. But big picture, you have to build up to that level of play and accomplishment, and it takes time.
Really interesting about last night is that they still could have won the game after that second quarter barrage. Like the Celtics offense, they stopped making their three pointers and like the hot shooting ended. There was an opportunity for the Hawks, but their offense, they 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 lost the rhythm that they had in the first what 16 minutes of the game, where I felt like they were getting good shots every possession. It just felt like they let and one of it might have just been general fatigue from their offensive gurus on the team, like Trae Young and Jalen Johnson in particular. Trae just didn't have it from the jump. And so hopefully this rib thing isn't that serious, but he just did not have the juice. And then Jalen, after that I believe either the end of the first, beginning of the second quarter spurt that he had, where he was really dominant and he was really brought the Hawks to take a lead. Like he kind of just didn't have it after that. And look at the minutes played with those two guys. Those two guys are leading NBA in minutes right now. So I'm not. It's frustrating that they lost that way. Like you could say, like man, they lost by 30 points. Like they got blown out. But like to me, the Celtics weren't playing that well either. That's kind of like they made a lot of good like tough shots in that first half, but the second half like their offense kind of sputtered too. It's just that the Hawks couldn't capitalize on offense. Like they just could not get they could no longer get to the rim anymore. And they weren't converting on their open three pointers, which has been a theme for them this season. Like, I mean, we talked about it. The Hawks only made six threes. The Celtics only made 18. Like that's literally the difference in the game right there. But I will say the Celtics only shot 32%. They got up a lot of threes. They got up an incredible amount of threes, but there was opportunity for the Hawks to win if they had a little bit more offensive juice on this team. But currently they're relying on Reece Shea and Dyson Daniels to be more than what they're capable of right now offensively.
There were, on the rewatch, there were three things about that game that I did not like. And the first one that I didn't like, and it's hard to quite argue it because feels a little bit horrific to say it, but like they started with Trey on Derek White and Reza Shea on Drew Holiday. And I would flip those.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, Drew's gonna beat up Trey. And it's like, okay. But if they do that, they're gonna get away from what they really want to do. Because when they play through Derek White, he's enough of a threat to shoot an off the dribble three that worries you. And that kind of gets everything going from there. And part of the reason it matters so much against the Hawks is because the beginning of their offense is going to be let's just get Trey into as many offensive actions as we can. Get him running around screens, wear him out. Like they're going to put Trey in the actions. And I would rather them have Holiday in all of his actions than Derek White. He's just not the same offensive player. He's not the same shooter. He's definitely not the same shooter off the dribble that Derek White is. And it's a little bit scary. And, there might be some like pick and roll drives where it looks bad or, he bullies Trey on a possession or two. And I'm okay with that, as I would rather see that than have them shoot 43s the way they want to.
yeah.
Yeah, and for
There's
Derek
a
White's not
certain level. Hold
yeah,
on, let me just get because Derek White. People really don't understand how great of a basketball player he is.
He's freaking good.
That's one of those things where it's like not understood. Uh, the Celtics are a better team if Derek White has like higher usage than like Jaylen Brown. Like he's just a better offensive player, and it's one of those things where like him and Tatum are a dynamic combinations. One of the best two-man groups in the league today has been that way since those two got on the same team 2 or 3 years ago. So, like, there are levels of not acknowledging who the best players are on the team. Drew Holiday, as great as he's been, has been a low usage player this year. They're clearly trying to manage him through the season, and he's also never been as lethal as a shooter as Derek White is right now. Derek White is one of the best shooters in basketball, and there was a lack of respect given to him, and it burnt the Hawks in this first game. I think that goes without saying. You can't just put Trey Young on Derek White and expect good outcomes.
They play
We've
again in a
seen,
week too. Like
yeah.
it's
So there has to be an adjustment there where it's like just flat out like even though Trey is playing better defensively, there has to be an understanding like Derek White is legitimately one of their best offensive players. He needs to be respected as such and treated as such. And like a lot of NBA like all these NBA teams are letting the Celtics off the hook. I feel like by not respecting Derek White, like they think he's just some third or fourth option. If you let him, he will just beat you by 20 plus points. And beyond that, the other issue, I don't know if you're gonna bring it up, was their backup point guard. Why am I blanking on his name?
you talking about
Peyton
Pritchard?
Pritchard. Yeah, Pritchard. Some team needed to give Pritchard real money in the offseason.
Yeah.
Like he's just flat out a very good basketball player.
Yes,
I
he
would
is.
argue he's a beyond a starter level point guard at this point. Like he's just a lethal, another elite shooter at the position who has to be respected. That teams just have not adjusted to the fact that he's just a better basketball player than what he used to be 2 or 3 years ago. So like, sorry, Glenn, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like it's one of those things where it's like it's frustrating when you watch it's because not just the Hawks, it's a lot of teams that are just like, oh, we gotta worry about Jaylen Brown, we gotta worry about I'm like, look, man, you got to take away the easy stuff from Derek White first. You got to take that away. Force like I thought the defense on Tatum was fine. Like he was making some great shots, but like you got to take the easy stuff out of Derek White. Force him, force him to play like the superstar against like elite defenders. Stop treating him as if he's the fourth option on the team because he's not. It's literally their key to success is you underestimating their second or honestly sometimes even their best player. Like it infuriates me. Like I don't get it. You know.
yeah. So one, Peyton Pritchard signed a 4-year extension. One of the best contracts in the league. Tops
It
out like
is.
8, I think. But I mean, on the right team, he could start and be a very capable guy, right?
The Orlando Magic, I,
Oh my goodness.
it's this reputation chasing
Yeah,
instead of targeting what we need. We need shooting, guard play, good. Like Peyton Pritchard was right there for them. They had the money, but instead we're going after Paul George. If we don't get him, we're going to get KCP. What has that done for them? Like KCP, a fine basketball player, but
Yep.
like there are dozens of Tavius Caldwell Popes in the right scheme who can do what you need out of a 3-and-D wing. There's just not that many guards who can make 3-pointers at the rate Payne Pritchard can. Like he's just an elite shooter, and like I feel like the Magic really missed the boat there. Like they could have really taken that leap instead of kind of sticking it out with what they have right
yeah, yeah. I mean, the Washington Wizards. I mean, I'd rather have him, with that group. Um, Utah. Yeah, I don't know who. I don't really know that they don't have a point guard of the future in my mind. But going to White, there's a couple other things too. One is I think people also don't realize yourself how subtly physical he is. He's really physical. Really, really physical. And it's not just a matter of Trey chasing over ball screens, but he relocate. Once he gets the ball up, he always finds something useful to do. He relocates, he creates space, he creates, and he makes you work. And you have to chase him all over the damn half court after he gives the ball
now.
after he gives the ball up, and that's there too. But for me, I you know, I don't know that I want to question Quinn, but the part of what happened matchup wise is the fact that Hunter's not available.
Oh,
You
sure.
have
Yeah.
Hunter.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You have Hunter that you can put on Tatum. You can put Dyson on White,
White.
But
right?
the
And it kind of
Celtics
goes
didn't
from
have Jalen Brown either, so it's like,
yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. But I mean, well, just on the Hawk side, if Hunter's available, you can slide Dyson to White, and you're better off. Their best stretches the defensive play were when Keaton was on. He was generating a ton of ball
sure.
pressure, and a lot of what they accomplished in the second half defensively was Keaton.
Absolutely.
Defending, with ball pressure. Um, but for me, it's like, did Quinn think about putting Jalen on Tatum? Like Tatum is obviously a very good player, but he's not this like explosive athlete. He doesn't have a bursty first step. He's not going to like blow past you, any of that sort of stuff. But if you put Jalen on Tatum, then maybe you can move Dyson onto White,
But
and that's a way to go, potentially. So, but Quinn seems to be largely protecting Jalen from those types of assignments. Like he didn't play a lot on DeRozan when they played Sacramento. Maybe 8 or 10 possessions if I'm recalling correctly there, and in this game too. So I'm not sure what the
he's
thought
trying to.
process is.
To me, it feels like he's trying to save Jalen's workload.
Right. And that
Uh,
was my
Energy.
second thing was
Like
like, okay, you protect Jalen early and you give him Horford. Okay, you kind of need somebody bigger for Horford because they can always post up. But like when you go to the bench and Jalen's playing with the bench, they put David Roddy on Tatum. And injuries
oh,
suck. And Roddy did what he could. Like honestly, he did pretty well, but he's 6'4". Like, and he's not an overwhelming defender to begin with. He was just getting shots over him. Like it's just not that hard when you do that. And that's mostly just bad circumstance. But I think if you're not going to tax Jalen with the starters, you should tax Jalen with the bench and give him that role there.
I think a, a sneaky issue with the Hawks right now. It's not just Trey who's playing too much. We're like he
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
have a backup.
Jalen's
Jalen
playing too
has
much.
no back. Like there is no backup power forward on this roster
Yep.
right now. And so like that's where it's like Jalen is playing a lot of minutes. His half court offense requires him to be a physical downhill driver. That takes a lot of energy. Like it just does. And
Yep.
combined with he has to be a transition player, gets the score efficiently. It's just a lot of energy. It's a lot to ask somebody to do all that and also guard the best offensive wing perimeter player.
Yep.
It is a lot. I and there's like some consideration things going on. They don't want to have Ricochet in like play against bigger physical players. Like they're it. I'm not going to criticize a lot of what Quinn's doing outside of the center position at the moment. I think there's a lot he's trying to manage, where he's trying to manage energy levels with Jalen on defense, and he's also trying to manage Ricochet, like just to keep him away from the. They don't. It's not that they don't trust him because I actually think he'd do a pretty good job at playing power forward, but they don't want him doing that this early into his career. Like it's clear that's not what they want him to do. They also don't want to tax him guarding like on the perimeter, elite offensive players. They because I mean I thought I don't know if we talked about this during the Kings game where I thought he had his worst performance. I really felt like the DeRozan matchup really like it really got to him mentally. Like that was like mentally it felt like he was taxed out of the game offensively. Like and like DeRozan's a lot to handle. Like he throws a lot at you know wing defenders. And if you're not used to that style of play, like it can throw you for a loop. And so I just think the Hawks were like, okay, we put him on Derek White. Derek White's going to do all these. Like Derek White's a good offensive player. He's also a creative offensive player. Like he's going to, but I still think they should have done that just because he's taller. But I can see the Hawks, like just in general, the Hawks are really trying to manage Ricochet at the moment until hopefully with if Hunter is coming back, that'll make things a lot easier for like everybody.
That's right. And the other thing, and I think they actually got to this in the game. I just thought they had their centers just playing center field way too deep in the first half, and I think they
Yeah,
by
no.
the second half they lifted them up some, and I thought that had some better results. Like they're just, I get that you want to protect the rim, but that's just the axioms are just that much different when you're playing Boston that you can't think the way you usually think. Like they twist what you want to do against you. But I
Yeah,
think
they
they
stay.
already made that adjustment. Like in the third quarter,
Yeah.
Clint seemed up, he was up at the free throw line, not halfway down the lane.
Yeah, yeah, and the first half he was uh I mean, maybe a foot higher than the restricted area, that kind of horizontal plane. And when they would sneak a shooter into the weak side corner, Clint's trying to direct someone else to that corner to keep him in the middle of the defensive floor. And they were slow. I mean, it's one of those things like if you're Quinn, can you affect that type of change on the second night of a back to back with Trout? I mean, it's hard, but like
Well,
I said on
you could,
Twitter,
sorry.
I said Celtics make you make hard choices.
Yeah,
The Celtics make you make tough choices. So
they do. I just, that's like the big thing. And I'll let you, I don't even have to say it. I could just say, Tyler, what should they have done with the back to back?
I mean, they could have just benched Capella, like
And he
especially in
was
the set.
great against the Pelicans,
I
just
know,
absolutely
I
phenomenal.
know, but
the
especially
word
in
is rested. The word is rested.
yeah, it's just one of those things. You know the type of matchup it's going to be. You know how the Celtics want to play. You know how it always consistently takes Capella time against these types of teams to adjust to how to play defense against them. You know all this. You got Larry Nance is playing some good basketball right now. You get a Kongu back. It would have been a perfect opportunity to just be like, hey, we're going to manage Capella here.
We're going to need you against the Knicks. Like,
Knicks, it's just one of those things where I just think I think this Quinn needs to be better about the matchup situation. This happened against OKC, uh, with the Thunder, and it happened again with the Celtics. There was another team where it happened with where it's the Kings late in the Kings game where the Kings aren't playing a center like and Capella played well against the Kings. Like I'm not trying to knock him because he was a big reason why they were coming back in the game. But I was like, the second Sabonis went out the game, you got to take Capella out. Like you know, it's if you don't have a center that's going to punish the Kings who officially decided we're not going to have any rim protection, you're just doing yourself a disservice as a team. Like that was a good opportunity to go back to a Congo with that game. I just feel like overall Quinn is not he's too focused on either individual play during the game or how they're playing during the next last couple of games instead of like the matchup when you have three distinct centers. Like they all three of these centers play so differently from each other. And I really think Quinn needs to be more cognizant of when he can get his guy. Because, like, to me, it's just in general, anytime you can get away with not having to play Capella on defense, you've got to do it just for the offensive boom. Like, I think that's the mindset Quinn needs to start having, especially when his team's going in these offensive ruts, because he's got to help like his young wings as much. Like Dyson and Ricochet, like next to Capella, it's just so hard for them because right now those two, they're offensively they're just drivers at this point. They're not bombers. This is Bogey is not here, and I think Quinn needs to acknowledge that. And I'm like, unless Garrison Matthews is going to play 40 minutes every game, he's got to adjust how he's playing his centers and who's on the floor and who they're playing. Like, I know that's a lot for a coach to do, but like, this is the modern game today. Like, you got to make these decisions, especially with how thin the Hawks are everywhere else
Yeah, I mean, I do think sometimes underappreciated how much just swinging the lineup or the rotation kind of on the fly. I think you have to be able to do it, but I also think fans underestimate how hard it is to kind of make constantly be making adjustments on the fly. For me though, when I'm watching Trey Lyles play center for Sac, I like put Nance on the floor and open up driving paths for Jalen, right? That's what I want to see on offense, right? And that's something that's just not going to happen with Clint on the floor. And I mean, I don't have to say everyone knows the appreciation I have for what Clint's done, but he's a different player now, and they can swing the skill set they're deploying in the center position to meet the need to meet the matchup in a way they couldn't last year, right? And I think that's something that hopefully Quinn will kind of lean into more there. It is for me, it's interesting to watch Clint. I made this comment the other day that they basically eliminated his hook shot, which
right now.
drove us crazy last year, right? And I mean, I think still he has right now, you know, 8 games into the season or what have you, career high field goal percentage, but they have eliminated a lot of the bad shots that he was putting up at pretty good volume last year. I think he deserves credit for that, but I don't think that alone makes me feel like you can't put Larry Nance on the floor when the other team doesn't have a rim protector on to create 5-out stuff that gives Jalen space to opportunities to attack the paint and the rim. Jalen needs that. Jalen needs that, and I personally do want to see more of that too.
I mean, and also like the release valve that Okongwu really gives his guards because he's able to make shots outside of the immediate painted area. Like those, I mean, those drop shots he was hitting against the Celtics, those were huge to keeping the flow of the offense going and keeping the Hawks in the game when early in that first half against the Celtics. It's just something that Capella does not like. Capella does not have an ability to score 8 feet away from the rim. Like he just doesn't. Kongu, you just have to defend him. You have to be a Kongu like completely took I'm forgetting Luke Cornett out of the game for the Celtics. Like he made Cornett unviable for Boston. He didn't play the rest of the game. And I thought it was a missed opportunity to really take advantage of other centers because it's not like Neemias Queta is like some elite mover. Like I thought Kongu could have really attacked him, uh, got him out the game, forced Al Horford to play more. Okay, now we're stressing the Celtics bigs physically on the inside. That's like currently just because of how the shooting is right now. Attacking the rim is the Hawks' like best strength as a basketball team, and it felt like Okongwu's ability to not need to be set up by his guards, like he can create a little bit for himself in certain areas, in certain pockets of the floor. I just think it was a missed opportunity not to really double down and really harp on that. But it's one of those things where it goes to another thing that the Congo's toe thing might be real. Like he showed up on the injury report late. at the beginning of the back to back. I don't think they're it's a management thing. So it's one of those things they could be trying to manage Okongwu's minutes. So it just it makes Quinn. I imagine Quinn is driving himself crazy with what the training staff is telling him what he can and cannot do with his rotations. But like so I get it, but I just think the coaching staff needs to be a little bit in general for the Hawks. They just got to be better with what they're doing at the center.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
I
I think there's a cumulative effect too. Like they've got to make offense easier for Jalen, but especially for Trey. Like the spacing's not there. Like he's working so hard.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, there's a few things I want to see. I mean, every time, every game, I'm like, I want more Keaton. I want more Keaton. Like, he's generating ball pressure. He plays with, I mean, he's not this dynamic offensive point guard, but he knows how to play with pace. Like when he gets the screen, he gets downhill. Like he gets downhill right away and he collapses the defense. So he does the things that you look for a backup point guard to do, he does. And and even when Trey goes out, Keaton plus, I mean, and Garrison, I mean, Keaton has the size to defend a two, not it doesn't have to be a point guard, depending upon if who the other team has out there. So for me, I'm still kind of and Quinn is leaning into more Keaton a little bit more every game.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that they just have to keep doing because in the second half, like he was driving Boston's line as crazy all by himself,
Oh yeah,
and just and that when you're down key defenders, that ball pressure taking an extra 4 seconds off the shot clock, and that has a big impact, on the amount of space and time you have to defend once you're in, set up in your defensive half court. So, yeah, that's there for me too to see more of that. He's not afraid to shoot. He's not afraid to create his own shot, one on one. He's got some nice size, and so for where they are now, from an injury standpoint, I want to see more of that. I think offensively, Dyson's doing a great job slashing and kind of using space, using length, using angles and things like that. But you get him in a late shot clock pick and roll, and that's where you kind of see his limitations show up. You want him cutting and all those sorts of things. Keaton can do the basics, like and in almost any situation, more than you'd expect from a guy on a two-way contract.
yeah. Keaton
Yep.
Wallace, he's the fourth Holiday brother we didn't know about
There you
because
go.
that's what he was. That's who he reminds me of. The physicality he plays with downhill on offense, and his defense is. I mean, his defense is incredible. I think Quinn is playing Keaton more, and I think Keaton's kind of earning it. Like
Yeah,
his play is earning him playing time,
Yep.
and so like I think this is good for him. Honestly, this is good for Keaton's career. Aside from the Hawks, like he's I think he's really establishing himself in this league, and it's a good find for the Hawks that they got somebody like Keaton Wallace uh, on their team. Because I like to me him, Garrison Matthews, like they really kind of. I think those two guys should be able to patch stuff until Veet Krejci, Kobe Buffkin, and hopefully Bogdanovich could come back. Like so where the Hawks can at least tread water because for all the doom and gloom a lot of Hawks fans are having about the season, which is very funny. If they look at the standings, they will see there are literally only two good NBA teams in the Eastern Conference, and everybody else is 3-5, 4-4, or a lot worse. The Sixers and the Bucks have a combined 2 wins on the season. Uh, it's been a rough ride for a lot of Eastern Conference teams. There's a variety of things going wrong. I think there's a lot of injuries and also a lot of bad play. I think the Pacers are shockingly not that good right now. The Nets are shockingly are feisty. Like I think what we're seeing is a lot of teams are solid. The Pistons have been, you know, good. Relative to their baseline that they've been. Like the Pistons are a competitive team now. So it's one of those things where the East is weirdly deeper, but it's the quality of the teams aren't that great, if that makes sense. Where it's like there's a lot of like every night's going to be a fight, but that's because each team has very massive flaws with them. That so like to me, I'm like, if the Hawks can just survive this month and a half without really, to me, it's really Bogey that's really the true difference maker that they're missing right now. It's very obvious. You watch them, it's like Bogey would change so much for this team. He'd make Trey's life easier. He'd make Jalen's life easier. Like that's just the fact of the matter. And so until Bogey can come back, if the Hawks can just tread water, they still have a chance to actually surpass expectations, which is a relative surprise given their injuries right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very bullish on the Hawks. Like, if you look at what they've done in the games that they've had Dyson Daniels, in the games that aren't back to backs, they've been fine. Like, and Dyson is great and he's important, but it's magnified because of the injuries. Like in the games that they've had Dyson, they've done what they were supposed to do. Like they're fine, and as soon as they get, especially Bogey, like that's the one thing that what am I not bullish about? The one thing that worries me is wear and tear on Trey, wear and tear on Jalen. And exactly what you said, like Bogey's the number one person to ameliorate that. Like as soon as he comes
Yeah.
back, life is going to get better for those two. And they just got to figure out how to bridge the gap until he gets back, and then I'll feel like okay, like this is manageable because they've got pieces and like I think I don't even remember which game it was now. I guess maybe it was the second Wizards game. Like they lost, but like there was a point where it was like 3 minutes left and they were down 10 and they made it a game because they can actually play defense at the end of games now. It's like, oh, was that the second
The
Wizards game?
Yeah, that Wizards game was pretty interesting because I felt like the Hawks were in control until Trey got tired. Like it was a lot of games where the Hawks are winning, they had a good lead. Trey gets tired in the fourth quarter, immediate, immediate like 15-2 run by the other opponents in like 6 minutes, and
But that
that's
was just so
massive.
eye-opening because I just don't feel like that's happened.
But yes,
That,
their defense
where
turned
you
up
could
in that
say,
Wizards
okay,
game.
defense is going to bring us back into the game with 3 minutes left. Like that was like it was a disappointing loss. That they it was a game they should have won, but like the fact that their defense could do that, like that, that's just something very different than what we've seen in the last eight
Yeah.
seasons.
And that's my observation. I still think, and I know I'll hear from fans who disagree with me. A big picture, I think they're building this thing in the right way. I think they're taking this thing in the right direction. They got guys that can defend. They're, play more modern version of offense, relying on motion and movement and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and I think that's they're taking things right. It takes, but they've been doing that for 8 games. They've been doing this for 8 games. 3 and 5, I think for the injury situation they have is totally fine. Just like Tyler said, the middle of the East is just kind of a group. It's sort of like if you ever go like for me, like watching my niece, little soccer team, one of them kicks the ball and 16 kids chase her around. It's like that's like the middle of the East, right now. Everybody's kind of in that same spot. And this is gonna be interesting to see for the Hawks, the key to not falling 3, 4, 5 games behind where they want to be in range is consistency, right? That's what's up and down right now is the consistency. Part of that is injuries, part of that is different guys playing and things like that. But just basic execution at a more consistent level is what is going to help them win game. But that's one of the reasons they lost to the Wizards is that it was really up and the execution was really up and down. And I love that late. They dug deep and they made plays and they gave themselves a chance. That never happened last year. I mean, it was a DJ Hail Mary shot, at the buzzer like 3 or 4 times. Otherwise, it was all garbage. But I love that they're fighting, now, towards the end. But I mean, the other thing for me to kind of circle back to Keaton, like what I want to see from Quinn, easy for me to say maybe. Trey's resting in the first half and Keaton's on the floor and things are going well. 1 more minute, 2 more minutes, three, like enough by that time in the first half. So at the end of the game, Trey has tries something else there, and that's what I'd like to kind of to see as well. I trust him a lot. I'm not sitting here pretending like he's going to be their backup point guard on the next great Hawks team, but what he brings defensively and just he's just stable enough offensive player. But like I said, if it's going well, tell Trey, hey, sit down for 10 more minutes. We'll get you back in. It's going well. So we'll fight that.
Yeah, I mean, for what they were going to do, a backup point guard with Kobe, like to have Keaton there is not that much of a dramatic difference. Like if Keaton plays the way he's played, like that's kind of what they were hoping for from Kobe. Like,
He's more experienced.
yeah, I mean he's older and he's more experienced and he's definitely got a lot more defensive chop slash experience together. But
Yep,
like, I mean, the net effect of what they're going to get from him is just about the same.
yep, agreed.
I mean, and just one last point, like what you're seeing with Risha, I mean, what you're seeing with Matthews and Wallace compared to like Risa Shea and Dyson is basketball professional experience at a hot like you can tell Keaton Wallace and Garrison Matthews are playing a lot more basketball than those two. They're older. They're just older. They're more physically
Yep.
mature, and they're more confident in what they're doing compared to those two. At least on the offensive end. Defensively, I have no complaints with Risha Shea, like and Dyson. Like they've been fantastic, but offensively is where things get in a rut with those two.
All right.
All right. I guess we'll just say good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.